So I just got back from Nashville, and one of the big topics I kept hearing over and over was sort of this translation thing, and how do you navigate the difference between listening to something in speakers and then you go to the Dolby binaural and then you go to Apple Spatial and everything is a little different. And there were a lot of different opinions on this, and a lot of that probably comes from everybody's own unique experiences in working with producers and artists and labels and just everybody involved in the music production process. So your mileage on a lot of this is going to vary from mine for sure, but I'll just give you my opinion on this and how I've been handling this lately, and I'm sure it will change over time. My opinion on this is similar to what I heard Bob Clearmountain tell us in a masterclass I was in about a month and a half ago, and Chuck Ainlay, he had a similar kind of thing on this. But my kind of approach is I am not going to chase the binaural, and I'm not going to chase Apple Spatial. And I'll explain a little bit about the Apple Spatial thing, especially because I just talked to Kerry Thomas when I was in Nashville. He was very gracious and gave me a couple of minutes to answer a quick question for me about Apple Music. The way I look at the binaural and Apple Music is these are just alternate playback systems. And they're alternate playback systems along the same kind of lines as we have had for decades with stereo. I mean, you've got people with different car stereos, clock radios, boom boxes, stereos, headphones. There's different earbuds. There's different headphones. You can't possibly, and we never could possibly chase every single way somebody might listen back to a stereo mix. And with Dolby Atmos, to me, it's similar because the technology is continuing to change. The Dolby binaural sounds different today, to me anyways, than it did when I first got into working in Atmos. And maybe some of that is my ears are just more attuned to things and I'm paying closer attention to details. That's possible. But I think a bigger part of it is the technology does continue to get better, and it's going to continue to get better. Now, with Apple Spatial in particular, this is another one that is a great example to me of a moving target. One of the things I was talking to Kerry Thomas about was how can we as engineers know when Apple updates their spatial audio fold down algorithm, whatever you want to call it. Kerry Thomas is with Apple, of course, and Kerry used to be at Dolby. So what Kerry sort of related to me was if there is a firmware update for AirPods, there might be a change. If there's an iOS update, that's where they might roll out a change. If there is a Mac OS update, there might be a change. But the bottom line to me was the way Apple Spatial works, it's very tied to the current OS. So here's where things get interesting for me. How many people do you know who update their devices right exactly when the update comes out? I mean, some people, but with a Mac, how up to date are they? iPhones, how up to date are they? If somebody's not on the latest OS or iOS, they're probably going to be hearing a different version of Apple Spatial. And if you're using the binaural renderer for Apple Music from Audio Movers, that is going to work different depending on what OS you are using the plugin with. Like I think I'm on Monterey for my Pro Tools rig back here. My laptop is a version above that. None of my computers are on the latest Mac OS. So for me to hear the latest version of it, I guess I'd have to go to my iPhone because I usually keep my iPhone up to date. But right there, just for me personally, I have at least 3 different versions of Apple Spatial. So with all of the different consumer devices out there on varying OS versions, how many different ways do you think your mix is going to get listened to on Apple Spatial? There's no possible way to kind of chase after that and keep up and make it work for everything. So I don't worry about this stuff as much as some people are worrying about it, because it's just so all over the place. And as technology continues to develop and there are more and more systems out there, car audio, sound bars, home theaters, whatever. I mean, even my MacBook plays back Atmos over the speakers. All of these things are going to be different, and chasing it to me is kind of nuts because you'll drive yourself insane. So my personal strategy is, when I am checking things on binaural in headphones, and when I say binaural, I'm talking about Dolby, when I'm checking things for Apple Spatial, these are just checks. What I'm listening for is major balance changes, major feel changes. Did something drastic happen that the mix just feels completely different to me listening in that format than it does in speakers? Because the speaker version of Dolby Atmos, that is the master. All of our headphone versions are chasing what it feels like to listen to this on speakers. So as those continue to develop and evolve, they are theoretically going to sound more like what we hear in speakers when we're listening to Atmos. That's where the headphone experience is going. And depending on who you talk to, there are some different platforms, plugins, things like that out there that are starting to do a better job than some other things. And so that technology, it's going to keep developing and it's going to keep getting better. And what works in one platform, the other platforms will start to update to follow. And that's just kind of the way this works. My recommendation with all of these different formats is, listen in headphones, check it in headphones, check the binaural, check the Apple Spatial, but I wouldn't lose sleep over it. If something is way off when you go to binaural or Apple Spatial, you probably want to make a change. You probably want to tweak your mix a little bit, but things are going to be different in there. Some of this is going to be just kind of personal taste and decision as engineers, but I'm not sweating those formats as much as some people are. Obviously, I want it to sound good if I have an artist who's going to listen back to their mix on that format, especially when I'm sending over a mix for them to listen to give notes on. I want that to work for that. But at the same time, all of this stuff is so up in the air, it's really hard to chase it. And so I'm not going to worry too much about it, because I just see it as something that has existed in the world of audio production for as long as we've been making records. Everybody's got a different setup at home. They're going to hear it a little different. My job as an engineer is to make sure that things translate well, but they're not going to translate perfectly every time, and I'm not going to worry about that. I just want to get something that kind of works on the most systems as possible, which is why I will listen in the binaural and I will check in the Apple Spatial. And again, they're just checks. I'm not spending lots and lots of time in these formats. I just want to make sure that it works, because speakers, that's the master. So that is just my opinion, though. I am sure there are a lot of people who will disagree with me, and that is absolutely fine. And I hope that you decide on your own opinion. If you've had experiences with this, with artists, with labels, I would love to know what you've experienced and what works for you. Please leave a comment below, because I may change my mind and start looking at this different. But right now, that's kind of what I'm going with, and it really was sort of along the same lines of what I was hearing from guys like Bob Clearmountain and Chuck Ainlay. So there you go. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.